He first noticed her on a cold, quiet night while walking home. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the shadows, or his imagination. A figure moved quickly in the distance, almost disappearing as soon as he looked. Something about her movements felt deliberate, precise, like she was following him but keeping just out of reach. He stopped and waited, heart pounding, but she was gone. The air felt heavier, and a sense of danger settled over him. Over the next few days, he started seeing her more often. Sometimes she was watching from the edge of the forest, other times near abandoned buildings. Every time, she disappeared before he could get close. At first, he tried to ignore it, convincing himself it was paranoia. But then he noticed patterns. She was always there when he changed his route, always there when he thought he had a moment alone. It became clear this was not random. She was tracking him. He began paying attention to small details. How she moved, how she stayed silent, how her eyes seemed to notice everything. He realized she was not like any human he had ever seen. Strong, fast, and extremely alert, she moved like she was born for this. He felt fear, yes, but also a strange fascination. Who was she? Why was she following him? And what would happen if she finally caught up? He started changing his habits, testing how she would respond. Sometimes he walked through crowded streets. Other times he hid in quiet corners. She always adapted, always appeared where he least expected. It became a game of survival, a tense battle of observation and strategy. He began to record the times, the locations, even small movements she made, treating every encounter like a puzzle to solve. Sleep became difficult. Every noise outside his window made him jump. Every shadow made his heart race. He knew he could not ignore her any longer. She was patient, intelligent, and relentless. And he had only one choice: to understand her, to prepare, and to find a way to face her if the time ever came. The first months were filled with uncertainty, fear, and careful observation. But he could feel a strange confidence growing within him. He would not be caught off guard. He would be ready. For 6 months, he lived with the constant awareness that she was out there. Every morning, he checked his surroundings. Every night, he listened to the smallest noises. He kept a journal of sightings, noting how she adapted to his routines. Sometimes she would appear in places he thought were safe, watching silently from a distance. Other times, he would see her shadow move along walls or rooftops, always just beyond reach. The feeling of being hunted was constant, but he refused to panic. During this time, he began to notice patterns in her behavior. She preferred high vantage points, and she moved in ways that suggested intelligence and strategy. She seemed to study him as much as he studied her. Whenever he tried to lose her by changing routes or hiding, she found him again. It became clear that she was learning from him as quickly as he was learning from her. He realized that underestimating her could be deadly. He started preparing in small ways. He practiced staying calm in tense situations, watching his own reactions, and planning ahead for every possible encounter. He learned how to move silently, how to hide in plain sight, and how to read signs in the environment that indicated she had been there. Each day, he felt himself becoming stronger, sharper, and more aware. Fear was still there, but it was balanced by determination. During these months, he also discovered that she had limits. She was relentless, yes, but even she made mistakes. Sometimes she would pause, hesitate, or return to places he had left hours before. He began using these moments to test his own abilities and to set small traps or diversions. Each encounter became a lesson, a way to measure both her skills and his own readiness. The 6 months passed slowly, filled with tension, vigilance, and constant mental calculation. He felt like he was living in 2 worlds, one normal, one filled with shadows and anticipation. He knew that sooner or later there would be a final encounter, and he was preparing for it with patience, careful thought, and a growing sense of confidence. He was no longer just running or hiding. He was learning, adapting, and getting ready to face her on his terms. Whenever that moment finally came, he knew the final encounter was coming, and he spent weeks planning carefully. Every detail mattered. He studied the places she liked to appear, the way she moved, and how quickly she reacted. He set up small traps and distractions, learning how to use the environment to his advantage. Rocks, shadows, narrow paths, even sounds all became tools he could use. He imagined different scenarios, practicing in his mind how he would respond, how he would stay calm and ready. During this preparation, he also learned about himself. He realized how much he had changed in 6 months. He was no longer the same person who had first noticed her in the night. He was sharper, more focused, and more patient. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Instead, it reminded him to stay alert, to respect the danger, and to never underestimate her abilities. He tested his strategy in small ways, creating situations where he could observe her reactions without being caught. Each test revealed something new about her, how she thought, how she adapted, and where she might make mistakes. He took notes, memorized patterns, and refined his plans. He learned to anticipate her moves, to predict when she would appear, and to prepare countermeasures for every action. She might take. Sometimes he imagined the moment they would finally face each other. The thought made his heart race, but it also gave him clarity. He understood that this was not just about survival. It was about proving that he could face an intelligent, relentless opponent without panic. The idea of being ready filled him with a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you have done everything you can to prepare. As the days passed, he felt a mix of excitement and tension. He was ready to stop running and hiding. He would stand his ground and use everything he had learned. He knew the Huntress would be clever, fast, and patient, but he trusted his own preparation. The coming encounter would test both of them, and he was determined to meet it on equal terms. Every step he had taken, every observation he had made, every lesson he had learned was leading to this moment, and he was ready to see it through no matter what happened. The day finally came when he sensed her presence close. The air felt different, charged with tension. He moved quietly, alert to every sound, every shadow. For months, he had prepared for this moment, and now it was here. He could see her before she could fully reveal herself, her figure partially hidden by the trees and buildings. She was waiting, patient, watching him carefully. He stayed calm, remembering everything he had learned. He positioned himself where he had the advantage, using cover and angles to control the situation. The Huntress moved closer, her steps silent, precise. He noticed how her eyes studied him, looking for weaknesses, testing his reactions. But he had trained for this. He stayed still, letting her come, letting her reveal her approach. When she finally moved into view, he was ready. Small traps he had set worked perfectly, forcing her to adjust her path. She paused, calculating, then continued. The tension was high, every second feeling stretched. He knew any mistake could cost him dearly, yet he felt a strange clarity. All his fear had turned into focus. He was not just surviving anymore. He was confronting a worthy opponent with confidence. The Huntress tested him, circling, shifting positions, trying to find an opening. He responded with precision, moving in ways that kept her guessing. For a moment it felt like a dance of minds and reflexes, each testing the other's skill. Then came the moment of truth. He forced a small confrontation, making her reveal her intent. To his surprise, it was not entirely hostile. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, showed more than pursuit. They carried a message, or warning, or perhaps a recognition of his efforts. The encounter ended as suddenly as it began. She stepped back, paused, and then disappeared into the shadows, leaving him alone but victorious. His heart was pounding, yet he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had faced the Huntress and met her on his own terms. The day of confrontation taught him that preparation, patience, and observation could turn fear into power. He stood there for a long moment, catching his breath, realizing he had survived not just by chance but by skill, intelligence, and determination. And he knew that, no matter what came next, he would always be ready. After the Huntress disappeared into the shadows, he stood alone, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. His body was tense, his mind still alert, but he knew he had survived a test far greater than he had ever imagined. The months of observation, practice, and careful planning had paid off. He realized that facing her had not just been about avoiding danger, it had been about proving to himself that he could remain calm, think clearly, and act wisely under extreme pressure. As he walked back through the streets and paths he had once feared, he noticed things he had overlooked before, the small details of the environment, the patterns of light and shadow, and the way every sound could be a clue. He felt a newfound awareness of the world around him, a sense that he had grown stronger, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. He had learned patience, focus, and the power of preparation. Over the following days, he reflected on what had happened. The Huntress had been relentless, intelligent, and extremely skilled, yet she had also taught him valuable lessons. He thought about how fear can sharpen the mind, how observation can reveal opportunities, and how confidence comes from understanding both oneself and the challenges one faces. He realized that survival was not just about reacting, it was about anticipating, planning, and being ready for anything. Sometimes he imagined seeing her again. The thought no longer filled him with panic, but with respect. He understood that this encounter had changed him. He had met a force that seemed beyond human, and he had faced it on his own terms. That knowledge gave him a quiet strength, a reassurance that he could handle challenges no matter how formidable. In the end, he knew life would continue, but he would carry the lessons of those 6 months with him forever. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and he had survived through intelligence, strategy, and resilience. The Huntress might return, or other challenges might appear, but he was ready. He walked on with steady steps, knowing that he had proven to himself what it truly meant to be prepared. And for the first time in a long while, he felt calm, capable, and ready for whatever the universe might send his way.